The elevator doors slid open with a chime that echoed like a gunshot in the silence of my pounding heart, revealing a penthouse that screamed old money, marble floors veined like lightning strikes, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering sprawl of Manhattan at dusk. I stepped out, resume clutched in my sweat-slicked hand, only to freeze as a man in a tailored charcoal suit turned from the bar, his whiskey glass catching the light like a promise of fire. "You're late," he said, voice low and edged with something sharper than annoyance, hunger, maybe, or the kind of loneliness that devours everything in its path. His name was Alexander Harrington, but everyone called him Alex, the 35-year-old wunderkind who turned a scrappy tech startup into a billion-dollar empire, gracing the covers of Forbes with that disarming smile that hid whatever demons lurked beneath. I'd answered his ad on a whim, personal assistant for 1 week only. No experience required. Salary enough to cover my rent for 3 months. Desperation does funny things to a guy fresh out of community college, scraping by on barista shifts in Brooklyn while dreaming of something more than the endless grind. But as his gaze raked over me, dark blue eyes narrowing like he was appraising a rare artifact, I felt exposed, stripped bare in a way that had nothing to do with the job interview. "Christopher Hale," I managed, extending my hand, my voice steadier than I felt. He took it, his grip firm, lingering a beat too long, the warmth of his palm sending a jolt straight to my gut. Up close, he was even more magnetic, sharp jawline shadowed with a day's stubble, hair the color of midnight waves tousled just enough to suggest he didn't give a damn about perfection. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to a leather armchair that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Obeyed, knees brushing the edge of his desk, cluttered with blueprints and glowing screens that mapped out futures I could only imagine. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I need someone who can handle chaos without flinching. Mornings start at 5, coffee black. No sugar, and my schedule synced before the sun's up. Evenings? Whatever I say." "You in or out?" His tone was all business, but there was an undercurrent, a challenge that made my pulse race. I nodded, throat dry, and just like that, I was hired. 1 week. 7 days to play house in this glass palace overlooking Central Park, fetching dry cleaning and fielding calls from venture capitalists who sounded like they gargled with scotch. That first night, as I navigated the subway back to my shoebox apartment in Bushwick, the city's hum buzzing through my veins, I couldn't shake the image of him, leaning against the window, silhouetted against the twinkling lights, like a king surveying his kingdom. Little did I know, that kingdom was crumbling from the inside, and he'd just invited a stranger to witness the fall. Day 1 dawned with the relentless beep of my cheap alarm clock at 4:45 a.m., the kind of hour that felt like punishment for sins I hadn't committed yet. I dragged myself out of bed, the lumpy mattress protesting as I stumbled to the bathroom mirror, splashing cold water on my face to chase away the fog. Staring back was the same Christopher who dropped out of design school 2 years ago when mom's chemo bills piled up like unpaid parking tickets, hazel eyes shadowed with exhaustion, a faint scar on my chin from a skateboarding wipeout at 15, the one Dad used to laugh about before he bailed for good. "You got this," I muttered, pulling on my one decent button-down, the one with the frayed cuff I hoped he wouldn't notice. The train into Manhattan was a sardine can of bleary-eyed commuters, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and regret. By the time I hit the lobby of Harrington Tower, sleek black monolith piercing the sky like an accusatory finger, my nerves were frayed wires sparking in the rain. Security waved me up, and the elevator ride felt eternal, each floor ticking past like heartbeats counting down to judgment. Alex was already there when the doors parted, pacing the living room in gray sweatpants that hung low on his hips, a black tee clinging to the lean muscle of his torso like it was painted on. No suit today, just raw, unfiltered intensity, his hair still damp from a shower, droplets tracing paths down his neck that I forced myself not to follow with my eyes. "Coffee," he barked without looking up from his tablet, voice gravelly with sleep. I nodded, beelining for the kitchen, a chef's dream of stainless steel and sub-zero fridges humming like contented beasts. As the machine gurgled to life, I stole glances at him, broad shoulders rolling with tension, the way his fingers drummed against the marble island, betraying a restlessness that belied his tycoon facade. I'd Googled him last night. Of course, endless articles painting him as the golden boy of Silicon Alley. Orphaned young. Built his fortune on AI that predicted market crashes before they happened. But the photos never captured the quiet storm in his eyes. The one that made my chest tighten like a vice. "What?" "No sugar," I said, sliding the mug across the counter. He paused, finally meeting my gaze, and for a split second, the mask slipped, something raw flickered there. Vulnerability wrapped in steel. "Thanks, Chris." The nickname rolled off his tongue like we'd known each other for years, not hours, and I swallowed hard, ignoring the warmth pooling low in my belly. This was a job, not a fairy tale. Guys like him didn't look twice at guys like me, not without strings attached that could snap and leave you bleeding. The morning blurred into a frenzy, syncing his calendar with meetings at Goldman Sachs and a pitch to some VC firm in Soho, transcribing notes from a call where he dismantled a competitor's strategy with surgical precision. He was brilliant, ruthless even, but every so often, he glanced my way, assessing, and I'd catch myself wondering what it would be like to be the one he turned to, not as an employee, but as something more. By noon, we were knee-deep in blueprints for his next project, an app that connected foster kids with mentors, a pet cause that surprised me, humanizing the machine he'd become. "Lunch?" he asked abruptly, tossing his tablet aside. I blinked, caught off guard. "Whatever you want," smirked, that crooked half-smile that hit like a sucker punch. "Sushi at Nobu." My treat. We ended up in a corner booth, the place buzzing with power players in bespoke suits, but Alex waved off the waiter like he owned the joint, which, in a way, he did, through sheer force of will. Over spicy tuna rolls and sake that burned going down, he opened up in fragments. Summers at boarding school in Connecticut, the car accident that took his parents when he was 16, leaving him to claw his way up from grief's rubble. "You're quiet," he noted, chopsticks hovering. Most assistants chatter to fill the silence. I shrugged, heat creeping up my neck. "Not much to say. Grew up in Queens, single mom. Bounced around foster homes after she passed. Design school dropout. The usual American dream bullshit. Honesty spilled out unbidden, and his eyes softened, searching mine like he was piecing together a puzzle. "Sounds like you've got fight in you, Chris." That's rare. The afternoon dragged us to a site visit in Chelsea. Some warehouse being gutted for his new office space. Dust motes danced in the slanted light as we toured the bones of the place. His enthusiasm infectious, gesturing wildly at exposed beams, envisioning collaborative spaces where ideas could breathe. I jotted notes, but half my brain was cataloging him, the flex of his forearms as he pointed, the faint scent of his cologne, sandalwood and citrus, mingling with sawdust. When a beam groaned overhead, he yanked me back instinctively, his hand on my arm like a brand. "Watch it," he murmured, close enough that I could feel his breath on my ear. My heart hammered, traitorous thing, and I pulled away too quickly, mumbling thanks. Back at the penthouse by evening, the city lights igniting like 1,000 unspoken wishes. He poured a scotch, because apparently that's how real men coped. We sank into the leather sectional, the skyline our silent witness. Why only a week, Beth? Emboldened by the burn in my throat. He stared into his glass, jaw ticking. Because nothing lasts, Chris. People get close, they see the cracks, and they run. The admission hung heavy, laced with a pain that mirrored my own scars, the ex-boyfriend who'd ghosted after I came out to my mom on her deathbed, or the string of hookups that left me hollow. I wanted to reach out, bridge that chasm, but fear clamped down. Instead, I clinked my glass to his. Maybe some things are worth the risk. That night, as I rode the train home, the subway's rattle lulling me into uneasy dreams, I replayed his words, his touch. 1 day down, 6 to go. But already, the lines were blurring, assistant bleeding into confidant, stranger into something dangerously like salvation. Little did I know, Alex had plans to shatter that fragile piece before it could even take root. As the week unfolded, the penthouse became less a workplace and more a confessional, its vast spaces echoing with the ghosts of our shared silences. Day 2 started with rain lashing the windows like an angry lover, turning Manhattan into a watercolor smear of grays and silvers. I arrived soaked, shaking droplets from my hair like a drowned rat, only to find Alex in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, attempting pancakes that more closely resembled charred hockey pucks. "Don't say it," he warned, flipping one with a spatula that bent under the force. I bit back a laugh, grabbing the mix from the cabinet. "Here, let me." My mom swore by this trick, extra butter, less ego. He watched as I worked, leaning against the counter with arms crossed, that intense gaze making my hands unsteady. We ate at the island, forks scraping plates in companionable quiet, the storm outside a dramatic backdrop to his sudden question, "What scares you most?" "Chris." Syrup dripped from my bite, and I met his eyes, unflinching. "Being invisible. Like you're screaming inside, but no one hears." He nodded slowly, as if I'd voiced his own dread. And for the first time, I saw the boy beneath the mogul, the one who'd lost everything young and armored himself against loss. The day spiraled into back-to-back calls, me perched at his side like a shadow, fielding interruptions with a poise I didn't know I had. By afternoon, we escaped to the Met. His idea of clearing the head, wandering galleries where ancient statues gazed down with eternal indifference. He lingered at a Rodin sculpture, the lovers entwined in marble torment, his voice hushed. "Art's the only thing that doesn't lie. It shows the mess we're all hiding." My fingers brushed his as we turned a corner, electric and accidental, but neither of us pulled away fast enough. Heat flushed my skin, a forbidden spark in the cool hush of the museum. Evening found us on the terrace, City lights fracturing the darkness below. A bottle of Cabernet between us. He talked about his ex. A Wall Street shark named Jordan who'd traded their 5-year relationship for a promotion and a penthouse view that didn't include emotional baggage. Betrayal dripped from every word. Raw as an open wound. I thought love was armor, he confessed. Glass trembling in his hand. Turns out it's just another way to bleed. I ached to tell him I'd been there, the bar pickup who'd whispered sweet nothings before outing me to our mutual friends out of spite, but instead, I offered a truth. Sometimes the bleeding's what makes you real. As I left that night, his hand on my shoulder lingered, thumb tracing my collarbone in a gesture too intimate for employer and employee. The train home rocked me into fitful sleep, dreams tangled with his scent, his sorrow. Desire coiled tight in my chest, dangerous and undeniable. But doubt whispered too, what if this was just loneliness playing dress up as fate? What if I was the fool? Handing over my heart to a man who collected empires but couldn't hold on to love? By day 3, the rhythm of our days had settled into something perilously close to intimacy. A dance of stolen glances and loaded pauses that left me breathless. The sun broke through finally, bathing the penthouse in honeyed light as I arrived. Armed with fresh bagels from Zabbers and a playlist of indie folk that Alex claimed kept the algorithms human. He was at his desk, tie loosened, collar open to reveal the hollow of his throat, a vulnerability he wore like a dare. "Morning briefing," he said, but his smile said more. Warm and edged with mischief. We dove into the chaos, emails piling up like autumn leaves. A crisis with the Foster app's beta testers ghosting deadlines. I mediated calls with devs in California, my voice steady as I channeled his vision. Polipace. Phone pressed to his ear, barking orders that masked the undercurrent of desperation. "Their kids. For fuck's sake," he snapped after hanging up, raking hands through his hair. "They need this." I nodded, understanding bone deep. The foster system had chewed me up at 14, spitting me out into group homes where dreams went to die. "We'll fix it," I promised. And for a moment, his hand covered mine on the keyboard, the anchor in the storm. Lunch was impromptu, street tacos from a truck in Midtown, eaten on a park bench amid dog walkers and tourists, the anonymity of the crowd letting us shed our skins. He laughed at my story of the time I accidentally dyed my hair green trying to impress a crush in high school. The sound rich and unguarded, transforming his face from severe to stunning. "Idiot," he teased, nudging my knee with his, the contact lingering like a question. My pulse thrummed, awareness crackling between us like static before a lightning strike. Was this flirting? Or just the ease of two damaged souls recognizing their own fractures? Afternoon bled into a photo shoot for some tech mag. Alex posed against the skyline in crisp linen, every click of the camera amplifying his charisma. I hovered on the periphery, adjusting lights at the photographer's whim. But his eyes sought mine between shots, silent pleas for grounding, for realness amid the flashbulbs. When it wrapped, he pulled me aside in the empty studio, voice low. "You're good at this, Chris." Keeping me steady. His proximity was intoxicating, cologne wrapping around me like smoke, and I swallowed the urge to close the gap, to taste the salt on his skin. "Just doing my job," I lied, because my job had become him, his rhythms, his rages, his rare, radiant smiles. Dinner that night was takeout Thai on the living room rug, cross-legged like college kids evading curfew. the TV murmuring some old rom-com neither of us watched. Conversation meandered to dreams deferred, mine of illustrating graphic novels that captured the grit of queer youth in the city, his of funding a network of safe houses for LGBTQ+ runaways. A legacy to atone for the privileges he'd hoarded. "You get it," he said softly, passing me the pad thai. Our fingers brushing again, deliberate this time. The hiding. The hunger for something true. The air thickened, charged with unspoken want. And when our eyes locked, the world narrowed to the space between us. Inches that felt like miles. I left with his number burning in my phone. For emergencies, he'd quipped. But the text he sent at midnight was anything but, "Can't sleep." Your laughs stuck in my head. My heart seized, fingers hovering over keys. Ditto. Sweet dreams. Bus. It was innocent enough. But the subtext screamed, desire uncoiling. Boundaries dissolving. Back in my apartment, posters peeling from the walls like forgotten promises. I lay awake, wrestling with the terror of hope. Alex Harrington was a supernova. Brilliant and bound to burn out anyone too close. But God, I wanted to orbit him, even if it meant ashes. Day 4 cracked open with a vulnerability neither of us saw coming. I buzzed up to find him mid-meltdown. Papers strewn like confetti from a bad party. His face ashen as he clutched a letter, creased and official, stamped with the eagle of some law firm. "They're suing," he ground out, thrusting it at me. "Pardon? This?" Claiming intellectual property theft on a joint project, dredging up their breakup like a weaponized autopsy. "Bastard wants to gut me." Rage simmered beneath his words. But it was the hurt that gutted me, the way betrayal echoed in his slumped shoulders. A mirror to my own ghosts. I brewed coffee strong enough to strip paint, then sat with him on the couch, reading the legalese aloud in a voice meant to soothe. "We fight this," I said firmly, highlighting clauses with a pen that shook only a little. He leaned into me then, head dropping to my shoulder in exhausted defeat, the weight of him solid and searing. "How do you do it, Chris? Keep going when everything's rigged against you?" His breath ghosted my neck. Stirring hairs I'd forgotten were there. Burned. Our faces inches apart. Lips so close I could taste his exhale, mint and misery. "One breath at a time," I whispered. And then, reckless as a free fall, I kissed him. It was tentative at first, a brush of mouths seeking permission, but he surged back, hands framing my face with a desperation that broke something open in us both. Tongues tangled, slow and deep, the world dissolving into the salt of his tears mingling with mine. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed, his eyes wild with a mix of triumph and terror. "Fuck the contract," he murmured, thumb tracing my swollen lip. "Stay." But even as elation flooded me, doubt slithered in. What if this was rebound? A balm for his wounds that would scar me worse? The rest of the day was a haze of stolen touches, his fingers interlaced with mine during a conference call, a heated glance across the room that promised more. We ordered pizza, ate it cold off paper plates while debating the merits of superheroes as metaphors for queer resilience, him championing Batman's brooding isolation, me arguing for Spider-Man's hopeful swing through the chaos. Laughter came easier, lighter, but undercurrent ran deep, confessions whispered in the dim light. About the first boy he'd loved in boarding school. Beaten out of him by fear, my fumbling coming out at a family barbecue, met with silence that echoed louder than screams. As I dressed to leave, reluctance heavy as lead, he pulled me back for one last kiss, fierce, claim it, the kind that brands your soul. Tomorrow, he vowed against my mouth. On the subway, city lights streaking past like shooting stars, I texted Mom's old number out of habit, imagining her reply, "Follow your heart, baby. It's the only map worth a damn." But hearts lie to, and as sleep claimed me, a whisper of warning stirred. What if Alex's war with Jordan unearthed secrets that could shatter us before we began? Day 5 erupted like a fault line finally giving way. The penthouse a pressure cooker of passion and peril. I arrived to find Alex at the grand piano in the corner, a gleaming black beast I'd assumed was decorative, fingers flying over keys in a Chopin nocturne that twisted my insides with its melancholy beauty. He stopped when he saw me, the notes hanging unfinished in the air like a held breath. "Couldn't wait," he said, rising to pull me into his arms, the kiss igniting faster than dry tinder, bodies pressing with an urgency that spoke of nights apart too long. We barely made it to the bedroom, clothes shedding like inhibitions, his hands mapping my skin with reverent hunger, the freckles across my chest, the curve of my hips, as if committing me to memory. It was messy, tense, all gasps and grips and whispered names that tasted like prayers. Afterward, tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets that smelled of him, we lay in sated silence, his head on my chest, heartbeat syncing with mine. "This," he murmured, tracing lazy circles on my stomach, "feels like home." The word lodged in my throat, sweet and sharp, because home had always been a moving target, a queen's row house with Mom's laughter, a foster bunk bed that never felt mine. With Alex, though, it bloomed possible, a skyline vista of what could be. But reality intruded with the ping of his phone, a summons from his lawyer, Jordan's suit escalating to depositions that could drag his name through tabloid mud. We dressed in hurried tandem, me buttoning his shirt while he knotted my tie. Domestic intimacies that blurred every line. The meeting was downtown, a glass-walled conference room where suits dissected their history like coroners at an autopsy. Jordan's name evoked venom in Alex's lawyer, tales of infidelity and ambition overriding affection. But it was Alex's flinch at every mention, the raw flay of remembered love turned lethal, that hollowed me out. Back at the penthouse, storm clouds gathering again over the Hudson, he paced like a caged panther. He knows me, Chris. Every weak spot, every secret. The confession spilled then. Unbidden, Jordan's discovery of Alex's bisexuality during their relationship. Weaponized in late-night fights. Gaslighting him into closets he thought he'd escaped. I built walls after him. Swore off. This. His gesture encompassed us. The bed still rumpled from our morning. Rage simmered in me, not at him, but at the world that made love a battlefield. "You're not broken," I said fiercely, cupping his face. "You're brave as hell for trying again." We salvaged the afternoon with a drive upstate, his sleek Tesla slicing through traffic like a silver arrow. Windows down to let the autumn wind whip our hair. The Hudson Valley unfolded in russet and gold, leaves carpeting roads like forgotten confetti, and we hiked a trail in Bear Mountain State Park, hands clasped against the chill. At the summit, overlooking the river's serpentine twist, he dropped to one knee, not proposal, but vulnerability incarnate, pulling a small box from his pocket, a vintage watch, engraved with "Time waits for no one, but you make it worth the wait." "For you," he said, voice cracking. Because you see me. Tears pricked my eyes as I fastened it on. The leather cool against my wrist, a tether, a talisman. We made love again under the pines that night, in a rented cabin with a fireplace crackling like applause. Bodies slow and worshipful, erasing old hurts with new grace. But Dawn brought a text from an unknown number. Tell your boy toy the truth. Alex. Or I will. Pardon. Striking from the shadows. His words a venom dart that pierced the bubble we'd built. The drive back was tense. Silence thick as fog. Alex's knuckles white on the wheel. It's nothing, he lied. But his eyes betrayed the lie. Haunted. Hunted. At the penthouse, confrontation brewed. Me demanding answers. Him deflecting with kisses that tasted of desperation. Just trust me, he pleaded. But trust is fragile glass. And one crack can spiderweb the whole. That night, alone in my apartment, the watch ticking like a countdown, I scrolled old socials, innocent curiosity turning to ice as I unearthed photos, Alex and Jordan at galas. But buried deeper, a younger Alex with a man who looked eerily like me. Same build, same haunted eyes. Coincidence? Or a pattern of projections? Hiring echoes of lost loves to fill voids? Doubt festered. A slow poison. But desire warred with it, memories of his touch, his tenderness, pulling me back. Day 6 dawned with resolve. I'd confront him, not with accusations, but with the raw need for truth. The elevator chimed, and there he was, waiting with coffee and a smile that cracked my defenses. Missed you, he breathed, drawing me close. But as our lips met, the unknown text burned in my pocket like a brand, betrayal's shadow lengthening, threatening to eclipse the light we'd kindled. The weekend loomed, but our week was fracturing, fault lines widening under the weight of unspoken sins. We threw ourselves into work, finalizing the app's launch. Me coding tweaks late into the night while he reviewed investor decks. Our collaboration a symphony of synergy. Yet every laugh rang hollow now, every touch shadowed by suspicion. Lunch was delivery falafel in the office wing, eaten over laptops. But his knee pressed mine under the table, a silent apology. Or manipulation. You're quiet today, he noted, concern etching his brow. I forced a smile. Just tired. Thinking about after. This. The word hung. Ambiguous. The week. Afternoon brought a board meeting via holocall. Alex commanding the room with charisma that masked his fraying edges. I sat off camera. Notes at the ready. But my mind wandered to the watch on my wrist, its weight a reminder of promises half kept. When it wrapped, turned to me, eyes pleading. Dinner out? Somewhere low-key. We ended up at a hole-in-the-wall Italian in the village. Candlelit tables crammed with locals. The air redolent of garlic and garlic bread. Over Chianti and carbonara. He opened up about the text, Jordan's bluffing. He found out about us, some PI tailing me. Once leverage in the suit. Relief warred with wariness. Was this confession? Or calculated calm? The walk home was hand in hand through Washington Square Arch. Jazz buskers serenading the night. Stars winking above the city glow. At his door, he pulled me inside. The kiss escalating to frenzy, clothes discarded in the foyer. Bodies colliding against the wall with bruising need. It was cathartic, reclaiming. His moans my name like absolution. But in the afterglow, curled against him. The doubt whispered louder, what truth is he hiding? Sleep evaded me. The ceiling a blank canvas for fears, repetition of patterns. Me as placeholder for ghosts. Day 7, the last, dawned crisp. The city awakening with honks and hustle. I arrived early, contract folder in hand, stealing for the end. Alex was in the kitchen, breakfast spread like a peace offering, eggs Benedict, fresh berries, mimosas fizzing gold. Sit, he said, but his eyes were stormy seas. We ate in loaded quiet until he slid a paper across. The contract? Stamped cancelled. What is this? I breathed, heart slamming. I don't want you as an assistant anymore. Chris. I want you. To. With me. Bottoms. No end date. Elation crashed against confusion, the gesture romantic, reckless, but laced with the text's echo. And Jordan, I pressed, voice steady. He winced, confessing the full blow, not just the suit, but a hidden engagement clause in their breakup settlement. Jordan threatening to expose Alex's indiscretions to investors unless he backed off the app. He knows about you now. Says it'll ruin me, sleeping with the help, to the press. Betrayal twisted like a knife, not Alex's, but Jordan's machinations, turning our love into ammunition. Rage boiled over. Mine and his mingling as we plotted countermeasures, lawyers on speed dial, PR spins, a united front. But beneath it, fear gnawed. What if exposure cost him everything? Including us? The day dissolved into strategy sessions interspersed with desperate trysts, each touch a defiance against the encroaching dark. By evening, as sunset bled crimson across the skyline, we stood at the window, arms entwined. I canceled the contract to keep you near, he whispered, because losing you would gut me worse than any lawsuit. Tears stung as I turned to him, the watch ticking our fragile future. Then fight with me, I said, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of forever or farewell. The climax hit like a nor'easter off the Atlantic, winds howling through the canyons of Wall Street on what should have been our first real date night. I'd suggested a quiet jazz club in Harlem, but Alex's phone shattered the illusion mid-limousine ride, Jordan's lawyers dropping a bomb, deposition scheduled for dawn, with witnesses to Alex's unstable personal life, code for dragging me into the tabloid fray. His face drained of color, the man who'd conquered boardrooms reduced to a ghost in his own skin. This ends tonight, he growled, diverting the driver to Jordan's Upper East Side lair, a brownstone fortress dripping with inherited wealth. I protested, let the lawyers handle it, but he was fire incarnate, storming the steps with me trailing like a reluctant squire. The door swung open to Jordan himself, blonde, polished, eyes like chips of Arctic ice, smirking as if he'd scripted the scene. Alex, darling. The temp, the bar blanded, but Alex shoved past, into the opulent parlor where crystal decanters gleamed like false teeth. Cut the shit, he snarled. Drop the suit, or I go public with your embezzlement from the joint fund. I have receipts. Jordan's facade cracked, venom spilling. You think you can play house with your little charity case and keep your halo? Investors hate scandals. Alex. Especially gay ones. The slur hung, ugly and American as apple pie laced with arsenic. And something in me snapped. He's not a scandal, I shot back, stepping forward, voice steel. He's a man who loves deeper than your greed could fathom. Jordan laughed. Bitter and broken. Revealing his own fracture. Love? You destroyed me. Alex. Then hired his doppelganger to rub it in. The revelation landed like a sucker punch, cast from the mold of his predecessor, a subconscious salve for Alex's guilt. Betrayal forked through me, hot and humiliating, eyes stinging as I backed toward the door. Chris. Wait, Alex lunged. But Jordan blocked. The two exes colliding in a tangle of accusations and half-swing fists. I bolted into the night. Rain-slick streets blurring with tears. The watch heavy as chains on my wrist. How much was real? How much projection? A rich man's therapy session starring a broke queer kid from Queens? Hours later, my phone lit with voicemails, Alex's voice raw. Pleading, it wasn't like that. You're not him. You're you. I holed up in my apartment, the walls closing in like judgmental whispers, replaying every touch, every word. Dawn crept in gray and unforgiving, the deposition looming like guillotine. Against better judgment, I showed, not for him, but for the app. Those foster kids who needed it more than my pride. The conference room was arctic, Jordan preening across the table, but Alex's eyes found mine, red-rimmed and resolute. I love you, he mouthed, silent vow amid the legalese. The questioning dragged, probing Alex's lifestyle with veiled disgust. But he held firm, voice steady as he dismantled Jordan's claims point by point, evidence of fraud. Emotional abuse. The works. When they turned to me, Mr. Arrangement with Mr. Harrington, I met their stares head-on. It started as a job. Ended as the best damn thing in my life. If that's scandalous, then yeah. Guilty. Gasps rippled. But Alex's foot nudged mine under the table, solidarity. By noon, it crumbled, Jordan's team folding under the weight of Alex's counterdossier, settlement whispers turning to retreat. We spilled out onto the street, sun-piercing clouds like benediction, and Alex pulled me into an alley alcove, rain puddles mirroring our disheveled triumph. I'm sorry, he breathed, forehead to mine, for the shadows I cast. But your light, Chris. My light. The apology unlocked me, tears mingling with rain as I kissed him fierce, forgiving, not erasing the hurt, but alchemizing it into strength. Weeks blurred into months. The app launching to fanfare, headlines praising Harrington's bold vision for vulnerable youth, our story sanitized to inspiration porn. But privately, we rebuilt, therapy sessions in Alex's penthouse. Me sketching graphic novel panels of our fractured fairy tale while he tinkered with code beside me. Betrayal's scar faded to silver. A reminder that love isn't flawless marble, but resilient graffiti on city walls, tagged, tested, true. One crisp fall evening, atop the Empire State, city sprawling like a lover's limbs below, Alex dropped to one knee again, this time with a ring, simple platinum band etched with worth the wait. Marry me, Christopher Halle. Not as assistant or echo, but as partner. Equal. Laughter bubbled through tears as I hauled him up. Yes, spilling like champagne. Hell yes. In America's relentless churn, from boardrooms to back alleys, foster shadows to skyline dreams, we carved our space. Humanistic and hard-won. It turned out, wasn't a contract to cancel, but a vow to renew, day by messy day. And in each other's arms, we found home, not perfect, but profoundly ours.